Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links was a mobile game that was just released, actually, and I think a lot of people were guessing that it was just going to be old school Yu-Gi-Oh! But actually, because of some ruling changes and because of the card pool, it's a totally different metagame. As we're going to go through the top 10 lists that I have here, you're going to see that it's not just what people expected, which was going to be like 1800 beaters and like powerful spells like Pot of Greed and Regeki. The metagame on Duel Links is something we've never really seen before. Just a quick rundown of the ruling changes that they made. So you start out with 4 cards in hand instead of 5. There's only 4,000 life points. You have a 5-card extra deck. Right now, there's only fusion monsters to go in there, but by naming it an extra deck, they give themselves the opportunity to expand into synchros and exceed monsters. And there's only 3 zones for monsters and then 3 zones for back row. Those are like the main changes. The other change is that characters have skills that activate throughout the duel. The most common and the most popular ones are the ones that activate field spells. When the game starts, it gives all your monsters a boost, and you don't have to actually play the field spells then. For this particular top 10 list, I'm only talking about generic cards. The meta decks in this game are dinosaurs and water monsters. So if I made a top 10 list going over those cards, it would be totally different, and they would just take up the whole list. But a lot of those decks are hard to build entirely effectively, so I want to show some alternatives if you don't quite have all of the monsters required for those decks. So yeah, this is the top 10 cards from Duel Links, and I've been gold rank on the ranked ladders for a while, so these are cards that I've actually seen impact the metagame. Number 10 is Jerry Beans Man. So, like I said, there aren't really 1800 attack beaters in this game, so Jerry Beans Man at 1750 is pretty much the strongest normal summon you're going to have without any drawback. It is level 3, so it gets around a couple things that affect level 4 monsters, one of which we'll talk about later on in this video. But Jerry Beans Man does kind of suffer from having 0 defense. There's a ton of battle position changing in this game, so that kind of puts it at number 10, but it's still one of the most common cards to see on the competitive ladder, and it's also a card that's quite easy to obtain. Number 9 is Enemy Controller. This has always been a popular card. Enemy Controller is just super versatile. Like I said, cards that change battle positions are going to be good in this game because a lot of the better attackers have low defense. But also you can use Enemy Controller to OTK your opponent by stealing their biggest monster. It's not quite as good as like actual monster removal, but pushing through OTKs, especially considering there's only 4,000 life points to get through, a lot of times Enemy Controller can just win a game by itself. Number 8, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but it's Michi or whatever. I think it's a Japanese or Korean word, but this is one of the only pieces of spot removal in the game. There aren't cards like Regeki or Dark Hole or anything like that. Those just don't exist. So this card, although a little bit slow, which places it at number 8 as opposed to another card we'll look at that's a quick play spell. Because it's a trap card, it's not quite as fast as you might want it to be, but it's still one of the more effective pieces of 1-for-1 removal in the game. So it's a little harder to pull. It is one of the ultra rares out of the set that has water monsters in it. But man, a lot of people play this card. It's almost a staple, so I had to include it. Number 7 is actually NATURIA Strawberry. NATURIA Guardian almost made this spot because you can search it with Arsenal Summoner, but NATURIA Strawberry is definitely the better version. So it has pretty good attack stats, and then when your opponent summons a monster, it gains attack points based on the level of that monster. This basically means that usually it goes up to 2100 if your opponent summons a 4-star, and then if they summon like a 3-star like a Jerry Beans Man, it would go up to 2000. So not a lot of normal summons can actually get over Strawberry without like the use of an equip spell, and at that point they're using 2 cards to get over your 1 card, so you're applying a lot of pressure to your opponent. NATURIA Strawberry is super annoying for new duelists to get over, and if you don't have a lot of good attack modifiers, it can actually just be impossible to kill. Number 6 is Twister. So this is basically the only good spell and trap card destruction in the game. D-Spell almost made this list, and I think D-Spell deserves maybe not an honorable mention, but it deserves a shout out because it's a lot easier to get than Twister, because Yugi and Kaiba both unlock it as one of like their first cards. But if you can get Twister, it's definitely just outclasses D-Spell because it's a quick play spell. It does have a life point cost, but it can hit trap cards as well. Some of the best cards in this game are face-up spells. Obviously, like I mentioned, field spells are huge, and so just twistering it right off the bat usually kills decks, because the decks that are playing those field spells usually are only playing 15 and 1600 attack monsters, because they're trying to, or they're building the deck to make the most out of the field spell boost, and there aren't a lot of good, like Jerry Bean's Man doesn't really get any field spell boosts that people would be playing. He's not going to get it from Yumi, he's not going to get it from Jurassic World. So yeah, I thought that was going to be pretty much the only good piece of spot removal, so it pretty much had to make the list. Number 5 is actually 4-star Ladybug of Doom. This card is one of the best going second cards in the game. The standard turn 1 opening in this particular mobile game is either normal summoning or setting a level 4 monster, and then on your following turn, flip summoning that level 4 monster, and then normal summoning a second level 4 monster. Actually, the Dinosaur deck does that pretty much exclusively. That's their only play, is summoning level 4 monsters. So by going second and setting a 4-star Ladybug of Doom, when your opponent summons that second monster, they're now losing 2 monsters to your 1 monster. They've wasted pretty much their entire turn, and then you can capitalize on it and do a lot of damage. It's pretty much like the best counter when you go second, so I definitely would recommend playing that. Number 4 is our other piece of spot removal, and that's Order to Charge. This card has never come up in actual Yu-Gi-Oh, but on this game it's incredible. So it's a quick play spell, and you contribute a non-token normal monster to pop a card. That's incredible because it's way faster than the trap card that was way back at number 8. And you can, like, similar to enemy controller, you can OTK with this like crazy. If your opponent has 2 monsters, you can attack over the weaker one and then tribute your monster to destroy the other monster on your opponent's side of the field. And it is slightly better than enemy controller, and that's why it made it higher on the list, because it actually gets rid of the monsters, so it's better as a defensive card than enemy controller is. They're both definitely work as aggressive cards, but Order to Charge is definitely one of the best aggressive cards, and it's also good to tribute monsters that are affected negatively by your opponent's attack stat modifiers, to clear their board and make use of the monster when it would have just been run over by battle anyway. Number 3 is BAZOO the SOUL-EATERE. This is probably unsurprising to anyone that actually played old school Yu-Gi-Oh! BAZOO the SOUL-EATERE is one of the best generic cards in the game in terms of this game, and when it first came out, it's a no tribute normal sun monster that has 1600 already, but then you can pump it up to at most 2500 for free, basically. I mean, obviously you have to banish monsters to do it, but pretty much any deck can play BAZOO the SOUL-EATERE, because any deck's going to play more than 3 monsters. 2500 is ridiculous on one normal summon, considering most decks are going to cap out at 1900, and that's the Dinosaur deck. But besides that, I mean, most decks are really going to cap out at Jerry Bean's Man for a normal summon. So BAZOO the SOUL-EATERE can attack over, like, probably the majority of tribute summon monsters in the game. I've never really found one that it can't kill unless that tribute monster is buffed up by something, or if it's like a Blue Eyes or whatever. But it can crash with almost any monster in the game off of just one normal summon, and that's just incredible. So definitely one of the best monsters in the game. Number 2 is Shard of Greed. Pot of Greed is not in this game. There's not really any broken draw spells in this game. So Shard of Greed, especially in this slower format, is just naturally going to be a good card. And like I said, because there's not a lot of good spot removal, Twister and D-Spell is pretty much it for back row. Your Shard of Greed is almost always going to last those 2 turns, and then at that point, you're so far ahead on card advantage that you usually can just win. It also puts your opponent in a tough spot if you're playing a field spell deck, and they have like a Twister or D-Spell, because then they don't know if they should pop the field spell or pop the Shard of Greed, and they're sort of in a lose-lose situation right there, so Shard of Greed is definitely one of the biggest tempo swings in the game. Before I go on to the number 1, I actually do want to make an honorable mention to the Hunter with 7 weapons. This is probably the best counter to the Dinosaur deck, because they only play dinosaurs, and they all cap out at 1900 attack points, so you can just summon this guy, call Dinosaur, and then it always goes up to 2000. And it is a pretty good counter to a lot of normal summons. The problem with it is that it's really limited in use, because there are decks that play multiple types of monsters, and then this is basically just a one-time 2000 attacker that just gets run over on the next turn. And it's also like atrocious going first, and it's just a dead card at that point. But it is pretty good at countering dinosaurs, and like I said, that is probably, I wouldn't say it's the most popular deck, but it's definitely one of the 2 best decks in the game, and it's a good counter to that, so it's therefore going to be pretty good, but it's not good enough to actually make this list, because the rest of these cards are ones that I can say, just put them in any deck, and they'll pretty much work. This one is a little more specialized. Anyway, the number 1 card in this game by far is Wonder Balloons. If you've watched any of the gameplay of the high ranks on the ladder of this game, you'll see Wonder Balloons in almost every single deck. This card is ridiculous for a lot of the reasons I've been mentioning, because monsters are usually only 100 or 200 points away from each other. You have a lot of 1600 and 1700 and a couple 1800 attack monsters when you factor in boosts. But Wonder Balloons, you can just discard cards to permanently reduce your opponent's monsters by 300 for every card discarded. It's not even like when you activate it, you discard the cards. You can do it. Usually people activate Wonder Balloons, discard 1 or 2 cards, and then several turns later they discard 1 or 2 more, so their opponent's monsters are losing 900 or 1200. And if your opponent doesn't have a Twister or a D-Spell, because a lot of people don't realize how important those cards are, they're pretty much screwed. There's no out to that. If all their monsters are losing 1200 attack points and they don't have a way to destroy it, you pretty much just can win with any monster at that point. This is why it is not uncommon to see people playing Twister and D-Spell in almost every single competitive deck on the ladders. But Wonder Balloons is sort of one of the harder cards to get. It is a super rare out of one of the bigger sets in the game, but man, even just having one copy in your deck helps so much, and it's definitely probably the most metagame warping card in the entire format. But anyway, hopefully you guys know this top 10 video. I just really wanted to... No one has really been talking about this game on a competitive standpoint, but there is a very rich competitive game on it here that I think is a lot of fun. Obviously, there's the grinding to get to the decks you want to make, but past that, on the PvP mode, there's a ton of cool stuff happening, and I kind of wanted to talk about it in one video. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys later. Bye.